This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 14 degrees with rainy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The Manitoba government and 3 First Nations have signed an agreement allowing Louisiana Pacific Canada Limited to harvest timber in the Swan Valley region for the next 25 years. The province says the Memorandum of Understanding extends the company's operating license by 5 years, allowing Louisiana Pacific, the First Nations, and the province to work together to create a 20-year forest management plan. Premier Wab Kinew says this agreement keeps hundreds of jobs in the parkland.
The jobs of people across Manitoba are very important to me. And the way that we're going to protect your jobs is by understanding that for other Manitobans who have important rights and perspectives that need to be considered, that for those folks, dropping a moose is part of their way of life and how they put food on the table. And so our idea is to bring everyone together. Earlier this year, Minnegozabi Anishinaabe, one of the communities part of today's agreement, filed an application seeking a court order to halt logging at Duck Mountain Provincial Park. U.S. Democrats are doing damage control after what many of them consider a disastrous debate night for Joe Biden.
The president might have lost the debate on style, but he won it on facts.
That's Mitch Landrieu of Biden's campaign defending the incumbent president's halting and soft-spoken performance. But a growing number of Democrats say their nominee may have to face some hard truths and step away from the race. Former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh says it's not Republicans Biden has to worry about, but rather all the undecided voters who don't like Donald Trump, but worry Biden is too old.
Last night moved most of them to Trump, and I don't think Biden can walk that back. And the way things stand right now, if Biden is at the top of the ticket, it's going to impact Democrats' chances in the Senate and the House.
Trump, for his part, repeatedly delivered a long list of falsehoods and lies and personal attacks. He evaded questions about foreign policy. He also didn't say whether he would respect the election results. A ruling today from the U.S. Supreme Court will make it difficult for those who took part in the January 6th riots to be charged with obstruction. It's a charge that has also been brought against Trump. The court's conservative majority ruled there has to be proof the defendants planned to tamper with or destroy documents before they stormed the Capitol buildings. The decision is being viewed as a victory by Trump's Republican allies, who insist the Justice Department has treated the January 6th defendants unfairly. The latest update on the state of the economy is showing Canada's gross domestic product inched higher in April. The GDP grew by 0.3% after being essentially unchanged in March. Here's Peter Armstrong.
This falls right in line with what we'd been expecting. The preliminary estimate we've been given from StatCan showed they expected about a 0.3% gain, and here we are, right on target. This follows, of course, a flat month in March where the economy was essentially unchanged. But these numbers show that through April, we saw a pretty broad-based recovery. Wholesale trade was up, manufacturing was up, mining, quarrying, oil and gas, they all contributed to this gain and to this additional economic activity. The one downside here was in residential building construction, which fell nearly half a percentage point. Certainly not great for the economy, but a much bigger problem for the housing crisis that's still unfolding across the country. Looking ahead, though, StatsCan's preliminary estimate for May shows they expect another smaller gain, but a gain all the same. So the second quarter of this year is really shaping up into a fairly solid little gain for the Canadian economy. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The remains of an unknown Newfoundland soldier killed in France during the First World War is now lying in state in St. John's. Under heavy rainfall, pallbearers carried the casket slowly over Confederation Bridge and into the provincial legislature. The French government formally repatriated the remains in May. The lying in state will continue until Sunday, and a reburial ceremony will take place on Monday at the Newfoundland National War Memorial in St. John's. Buckingham Palace says Princess Anne is now out of the hospital and is recuperating at an estate in West England. The King's sister suffered a concussion and minor injuries earlier this week in what appears to be a horse-related incident. The 73-year-old has been forced to cancel a number of her public appearances, including this weekend's scheduled visit to St. John's. And a very special lemonade stand is helping 3 Winnipeg mothers in their battle against cancer. The 3 women were friends long before their cancer diagnoses. Their 10-year-old daughters were also friends. So the three girls decided to help out by selling lemonade, with the proceeds going to Cancer Care Manitoba. Cynthia Mitchell says she's grateful for the support of her friends, her family, and the people who donated.
Regardless of my outcome, seeing that my children are surrounded by community and by love and support, and I know that they will be okay. And so seeing the lemonade stand in action and all of these people coming and supporting them, it's just something that I will hold with me for however long that I have.
The girls raised more than $2,000 for cancer care through their lemonade stand. We are seeing rain off and on today. Windy in Winnipeg. We have a risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon, a high of 15 in Winnipeg. Brandon, periods of rain and windy, a high of 15. Dauphin, windy and rainy, a high of 17. Flin Flon, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of 19. Thompson, sunny, a high of 17. And in Churchill, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of 18 degrees. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon, and happy Friday. Calling all cricketers and cricket fans. What made you fall in love with the sport? The T20 Cricket World Cup final will be played tomorrow, and today on Radio Noon in our second half hour, Alfonso Franco, the manager of the Canadian men's cricket team, joins us to talk about the sport. A major undertaking in Winkler just got a major shot in the arm thanks to the Winkler Community Foundation. We're going to hear how this will help reduce poverty in the community coming up on Radio Noon. But the show begins today with a precedent-setting agreement in the journey toward reconciliation in our province. The Manitoba government and 3 First Nations have signed a historic agreement. It will allow Louisiana Pacific Canada Limited to harvest timber in the Swan Valley region for the next 25 years. Here's Premier Wab Kinew, who says this agreement keeps hundreds of jobs in the parkland.
This is a significant moment. It sets a new relationship, a new standard for the relationship to be pursued over the coming decades. And I want to speak specifically to the people on the shop floor at Louisiana Pacific. And I want to speak specifically to the people in the bush swinging a chainsaw, supplying the raw material that is processed in that plant. I know there's been a lot of concern and a lot of uncertainty, and I want to say this deal here today is important because it brings security to your jobs for the next quarter century. There's a 5-year agreement that we're going to work together as the Crown, as First Nations leaders, to arrive at a 20-year plan for the future of the forest, for the way of life, and of course for the operations at that LP facility in Minitonas. And it's important for me to talk about this because when I visited the plant, I talked on the shop floor with the rank and file. The people who go to work in the morning and come home at the end of it with dirt under their fingernails. People who work with hard hats and high-vis vests on and coveralls. When we're talking about jobs, I respect your jobs. That's my priority. And when I talk about my job as the Premier of Manitoba, it's to stand up for people like you. And there are people from Wesquesipik, Sebetoyak, from Pine Creek working on the shop floor, with the same last names as some of the leaders who are here today. And they're working right alongside people on the shop floor who come from Ukrainian families and French families and English families and every different walk of life that we have in the Parkland region, that we have across the province of Manitoba. And I want to say that this is how jobs in the resource sector are going to be built and protected going forward in Manitoba and in Canada. We're a country that is rich in natural resources, and we have a long tradition of building the economy in relation to those sectors. Going forward into the future, for the next 150 years, having job security for people who work with a chainsaw or who work on the shop floor or who work in any of the resource sectors. It's going to be involved looking at the environmental perspectives and ensuring that the Indigenous nations are on board. This is the path forward. And so our government is very honored to be joined by leadership here today and to be able to move forward in a good way. Your jobs are important to me. The jobs of people across Manitoba are very important to me. And the way that we're going to protect your jobs is by understanding that for other Manitobans who have important rights and perspectives that need to be considered, that for those folks, dropping a moose is part of their way of life and how they put food on the table. And so our idea is to bring everyone together. We're one Manitoba, we have one future that we share here together. And to work these issues out in a good way is how we're going to ensure that you can keep putting food on the table and that your neighbors can keep putting food on the table as well. And of course, like I acknowledged, there's many Métis citizens and First Nations people working on the shop floor who want to be able to exercise their treaty and Indigenous rights at the same time that they want to be able to collect a good paycheck by having a unionized job in the LP facility. And so we have a path forward here that I'm feeling very positive about, because it represents a turning of the page. As you've heard, history looms large in many of these conversations and in many of the deliberations that we have. But the future and what we want to be able to do together looms equally large as well. And we need to put our minds together to be able to chart a course forward that works for everybody. And so I acknowledge the leadership, Chief Nepanak, when he says that they don't want to take food off anyone's table. And I also want to acknowledge that for many times in the past, people in these First Nations and in other Indigenous communities felt like they were being prevented from earning a livelihood in the way that they have since time immemorial. And so today we're committed to working together to ensure that we're looking after all of that together with one eye towards the future.
That is Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew. The province of Manitoba and the leaders of 3 First Nations signed an historic land agreement just last hour governing logging in parts of the province and protecting culturally important areas and activities. Now, from Winnipeg husband and wife duo Burnstick, this is Hands Tied.
There's a war that rises with the morning light, and a weathered man that's keeping time. We hit the ground running to the daily grind. Gone is grace and peace of mind. Who am I? We wipe our brow under the midday sun. Can the mistakes we've made even be undone? Our hands are tied and our feet outrun. Bite the bullet as you point the gun. Who am I? Oh, it was so simple. On the downhill, time betrayed our trust. As the witching hour is creeping in, and our burning flesh shows we're made of sin. It's hard to know which side to bear. Cut each other down as we gasp for air. Who am I? Oh, it was so simple. Where crossed on the downhill. Time betrayed our trust. Oh, it was so simple. When it was just us. Roads got crossed on the downhill. Time betrayed our trust. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?
Hands Tied by Burnstick. It's 12:16. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. My name is Janet Stewart. Thanks for being with us today. We've got quite a guest lined up to chat with us in our second half hour today. Alfonso Franco will be here. He's the manager of Canada's men's cricket team. And if you're a cricketer, you know how important the manager of a team is. We're going to talk about the growth of popularity of cricket in our country. What's it going to take, cricket fans, to get your fellow Manitobans and folks in northwestern Ontario to follow the sport like you do, to love it like you do? Give us a call after our 12:30 news and weather, and let's talk cricket on the eve of the World Cup final, the T20 World Cup final. Also coming up, we're going to talk about a major undertaking in Winkler. It just got a major shot in the arm. It's the effort to fight poverty in that community. We're going to hear more about that in just a moment. First, let's take a look at your weather today, which I have to say is a little bit weird. Here's what's weird about it. We have a temperature inversion happening. What that means is that through the day today, the temperature is actually falling. It's going to fall today during the day. So we've already experienced our high temperature in most of Manitoba, certainly in the south of the province. We've got rain, periods of rain. It is going to clear off to leave us with hopefully a mainly sunny Saturday and temperatures, around 20 degrees. So not bad, but not as warm as you might expect for this time of year. Riley Lachek's going to join us after the 12:30 news to give us a bigger sense of what's happening in the province weather-wise. To effectively fight a growing problem, you'd better have a good understanding of just what that problem involves. That's why Central Station Community Centre in Winkler is focused on learning everything it can about who in that community lives in poverty and how their needs can be met. That's essential information they need to build an effective poverty reduction plan. The Winkler Community Foundation clearly agrees this research is needed. It has just announced $10,000 in funding to support the project. Krista Rempel is Central Station's Director of Social Impact, and she joins us by Zoom. Thanks for being with us, Krista, and congratulations on receiving this grant.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Why does Winkler need a poverty reduction strategy?
We've seen increased issues come up in our community in the last few years. And I think even over the last 10 years, we've seen increased problems. I think the food cupboard, the rate of usage of the food cupboard has increased. We've seen housing become increasingly an issue where homeless folks are entering our doors on a regular basis now, where that didn't happen necessarily as much a few years ago. We've seen the mental health wait lists time has grown significantly in the recent years, and it all seems to be trending upwards. And we just believe as a community and as a community center that everyone deserves the right to live in a house that they can be proud of, and they deserve the right to thrive and have dignity. And so for us, those indicators meant that we needed to take action.
So take action. A lot of people might think that, okay, great, you've got $10,000 now that you didn't have before. Why not just put that into restocking the food cupboard or meeting needs immediately? Why spend that money on research. Why do you think that the research is actually going to get you a bigger bang for your buck?
Yeah, so the research is going to be kind of phase one. We do have a much broader approach that we're hoping to engage in over the next 3 to 5 years. But the research is really the first phase. And it's important because we have to set a baseline. To know where we're going, we have to know where we've been and where we're at. So it's important that we understand the issue of poverty and how it relates specifically to Winkler. There's a lot of data around Manitoba and even federally what poverty looks like, but we needed to know what it looks like and how the root causes and the effects of poverty specific to Winkler.
When poverty becomes homelessness and somebody walks in your door, I mean, that's when it hits you in the face. How much do you think families could be struggling and keeping it hidden?
It's definitely a hidden problem in Winkler. And probably in other places as well. But in Winkler, when you think of homelessness, you often think of the encampments and the tents. In Winkler, it can often look different. It can be couch surfing. It can be unstable housing or unsuitable housing. So maybe you have a house, but it's not adequate for your needs. You don't have enough bedrooms and things like that. Or maybe you're living in unsanitary conditions. There's a whole host of things that go along with adequate and just even housing that you can be proud to live in and that increases your sense of dignity.
Who are you hoping to work with on the development of this plan?
We currently are actually very fortunate to have been able to partner with 21 different individuals right now representing different sectors. And those people have all come from different agencies within Winkler that they themselves have an interest in poverty reduction. And we're very fortunate that the city of Winkler has given a stamp of approval and saying, yes, we want to be part of this. And quite a few other places have come on board as well. And so we feel that now is the time to act because we do have that support.
And why is it important that it be a collaborative thing and not just something that Central Station tries to do?
I think the impacts are just going to be far greater reaching if we have a collective effort. Most of the agencies in town are already doing poverty reduction work. And so for us to try to reinvent the wheel doesn't necessarily make sense. We want to use the resources and the structures and the wonderful people that already exist that are doing this work and come together. And I think we can gain even a little bit more traction if we are all working together and we can really have an effect on poverty.
Krista, let's talk just a little bit about you and your connection to the people in your community, to your neighbors and friends. Why are you so passionate about this?
For the last 6 years, I've been working as a community mobilization RAP facilitator. So I've seen firsthand the devastation of poverty. I worked closely with people who were navigating really complex, difficult life situations. And what I've seen is that if you are not able to rise out of poverty, you're really not in a place to be able to address any of your life needs. You're not in a place that you're going to thrive. You're not in a place that you're going to be able to contribute to society because you're really just surviving. And I've seen that in my clients. I've seen it in domestic abuse survivors and people who are facing criminal charges. It becomes a cycle that they are so deeply entrenched in. And for me, we don't really want to create a situation in which we are just helping people survive in poverty. We want to help lift people out of poverty.
You mentioned earlier a timeline that sounded quite long. You were talking in terms of 5 and 10 years. Are you working on this right now this summer?
Absolutely. We are currently in a data collection phase. Like I mentioned before, we want to have a good baseline, but hopefully this fall our leadership table will come together again and we'll take a look at the data and create a long-term plan and some strategies. We're hoping that out of this, we will be able to build a top-down and a bottom-up approach to poverty reduction and create some grassroots initiatives that will happen in Winkler. And we're going to form action tables, people who want to volunteer, who have skills, who are interested in helping, but maybe don't know how to use their efforts right now. And so we're hoping to bring all of those people together in the fall and start actually creating and putting some legs to the plan.
It's that part of it sounds empowering when you're facing something that can sound daunting. If someone's listening and they have an interest in this, or they think they can help somehow, how do they learn more about it?
Yeah, you can contact me at Central Station or our executive director, Anita Wiebe. Either one of us would be more than happy to talk to you about how you can fit into this plan. And there is room for everyone at this table.
Krista Rempel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Krista Rempel is Central Station's Director of Social Impact. She joined us by Zoom from Winkler.
Massey Hall, the most iconic music venue in Canada. An absolute milestone in the careers of musicians who stand on the historic stage. And you have a front row seat. The Beaches, Charlotte Cardin, William Prince, Jeremy Dutcher, July Talk, and more. CBC Music Live at Massey Hall. Now available on CBC Jam.
Thank you, Toronto!
It is 12:27. You're listening to Radio Noon. My name is Janet Stewart. Still to come, our conversation about cricket. We want to hear from you after the 12:30 news. If you're a fan of cricket, if you would love to see the sport grow in popularity here, give us a call and join our conversation with Alfonso Franco, who is the manager of Canada's men's cricket team. This week, the Debaters is having a merry time when they ask if being a lighthouse keeper is a dream job. Now, as a Nova Scotian, I think it would be pretty great. Sean Cullen gives an illuminating argument on the luxurious lives of lighthouse keepers, but John Steinberg says this position is on rocky terrain. Here's Sean in his opening argument in favor of the life of a lighthouse keeper.
The lighthouse! A stern finger of reproach, raised accusingly at the uncaring world, is waiting for you. All alone, you will tend the light that guides ships to safety in the stormy night, a heroic tender of the flame who guides the sailors to safety, despite how they rejected you and mocked you. Made your life a living hell with their judging dirty eyes. You are bigger than they are. Superior in every way. Standing at the pinnacle of your lighted tower, you look down on their petty struggles, knowing that you could switch off the light at any moment.
Comedian Sean Cullen from The Debaters. Don't miss the show tomorrow at 1 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1. Of course, you can listen to it whenever you want to on the podcast, which you'll find on our apps or at cbc.ca/The Debaters.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
All right, cricket fans, we want to hear from you. We want to talk cricket today on Radio Noon. We've got the manager of Canada's men's cricket team joining us. His name is Alfonso Franco. Now, why are we doing this? Because Canada, for the very first time, our men's cricket team qualified for the T20 Cricket World Cup. They even won a match. That's huge. That's a great development in the sport. Now, tomorrow is the final. India facing South Africa. We know there are people in our listening audience who are going to be watching that match. So call us now, 204-780-0893. It's 12:30.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 14 degrees with rainy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Premier Wab Kinew says a new agreement signed by the province and 3 First Nations is a path forward. The province says the Memorandum of Understanding extends Louisiana Pacific Canada's operating license by 5 years, allowing the company, the First Nations, and the province to work together to create a 20-year forest management plan. Kinew says the agreement keeps jobs in the region while bringing people together.
For the province of Manitoba, that is going to mean a new approach. It's going to mean sharing resources and sharing decision-making in a way that perhaps wasn't done in the past. And for the Indigenous communities involved, it's going to mean that continued openness towards sharing that has been persistent over the past 150 plus years and even longer than that.
Earlier this year, Minagoza Anishinaabe, one of the communities part of today's agreement, filed an application seeking a court order to halt logging at Duck Mountain Provincial Park. In international news, Iranians are voting in a snap election triggered by the sudden death of President Ibrahim Raisi. He was killed in a helicopter crash last month, and while it's likely his successor will keep the status quo, he will also inherit a host of problems, from a battered economy to growing dissent. Sasha Petrusek has more.
The early vote may have been unexpected, but few predict big surprises. All 4 candidates are carefully vetted. And even if there is a reformer among the staunch conservatives, everyone has vowed loyalty to the supreme leader. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei voted on live TV. Like his edicts on confronting Israel and the U.S., it's his choice that counts the most. But for Iran's honor, he says, he needs a good turnout. Indeed, any democratic legitimacy is in doubt, as many Iranians, still angry with crackdowns by the Islamic dictatorship in response to widespread protests, are boycotting this vote. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, 3 Winnipeg mothers and their young daughters are bonding over cancer and lemonade. The women were already friends long before each of them received their cancer diagnoses. Their 10-year-old daughters decided to open a lemonade stand to help raise money together for Cancer Care Manitoba. Michelle Wetter says their situation has strengthened their friendship.
I have felt so fortunate that we're able to chat about things and also that our daughters can support each other and have someone else that's going through something similar.
The girls have raised more than $2,000 through their lemonade stand. One customer donated $100 and didn't even want a lemonade. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you so much, Matt Humphrey.
Back soon.
That is true charity. True Manitoba charity. Give $100 to the fight against cancer and don't even ask for lemonade in return. We have Riley Lachuk joining us here, the man of the hour, because he's our weather specialist. And he's going to explain no, it's not your fault, but it's so strange on this Friday, when we'd all love to see such nice weather, to have a temperature inversion, to have it actually dropping through the day.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily dropping any more than we've seen it drop now, but we'll say things kind of steady out where we are at the moment. So kind of steady around 15 degrees.
Which is a bit, that's cooler than normal, is it not?
It is, yes. As we get through the afternoon hours today. Looking at satellite radar, still quite a bit of rain falling really right across southern Manitoba. Unfortunately, the Woodlands radar, which we see giving radar data for us here in the Red River Valley, is actually down at the moment, so we can't quite see the rain on radar, but nonetheless it is there, and even extending further north into the northern Interlake, even some showers, say as far north as the Pas or so. Otherwise, we are looking at some pretty heavy pockets of rain really right across southern Manitoba into especially into the Dauphin Riding Mountain region, looking at some heavier pockets as we get through the day today. That does make its way further to the east as we get through the afternoon, so expect sort of showers on and off through the day here in the Winnipeg region, really right across southern Manitoba, periods of some light rain today. Continuing into the evening hours, by the time we get into the overnight, things do start to taper off through the overnight hours, and then back to a mainly sunny sky by early in the morning on Saturday. Mainly sunny skies through the day on Saturday, mainly sunny through the day on Sunday. Bit of cloud builds in Monday, and a good chance we could see a few scattered showers to the afternoon Monday with the risk of a thunderstorm. So Monday's not a full sort of washout, but the potential there on Monday later in the day for a few scattered showers rolling through southern Manitoba. Rain to come. The forecast modeling suggesting about another 5 millimeters or so through the Red River Valley, some pockets of 10 to 15 through the Dauphin Swan River region, and maybe even a little bit. It all depends if you get caught in one of these downpours, the potential for some higher accumulations into that 10 to 20 millimeter range in southwestern Manitoba. But generally, another 5 millimeters or so across the southern part of the province as we get through your Saturday. Friday's forecast. Today's forecast, temperatures really steady around 15 degrees, 14 degrees to the afternoon today. So really not going anywhere temperature-wise. On and off rain through the day. Sunnier conditions to the north. Lynn Lake, Thompson, both getting to 18 degrees under mainly sunny skies today. Gillam, 17 this afternoon. So you have to go quite a bit further north to find some sunshine in Manitoba. We get that here in the south tomorrow. High pressure takes over, and that will clear our skies out for the next couple of days. 20 for Saturday, 23 for Sunday, 20 for Monday. Looking long range, Janet, into the next 10, 11-day forecast. Take it with a grain of salt because forecasting really not that accurate that far out.
No.
Temperatures getting back into sort of that high 20 range by the time we get to, say, July 9th or 10th.
Which
we have
sounds
to wait a bit.
so long away. But that's okay because, you know what? I don't mind milder temperatures.
Yeah.
Riley Lachuk, thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Riley will be back during Up to Speed today between 3 and 6 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1. And of course, you can watch the TV newscast tonight on CBC on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. It airs from 6 to 7 live, but of course, you can go online and watch it whenever you want to. Hello to everybody watching on YouTube. It will be India facing South Africa tomorrow in the final of the T20 Cricket World Cup. India beat England yesterday by 68 runs. So we are calling all cricketers today and cricket fans. We want to know how you feel about that matchup and what you think it's going to take for more Manitobans to start following the sport the way you do, the way much of the world does. We've got a great guest with us today, so call in and join our conversation. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. That guest I mentioned is the manager of Canada's men's cricket team. Alfonso Franco joins us by Zoom. Hello, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me here. It's my honor to be here. Since cricket was the national sport of Canada in 1867, as declared by Sir John A. Macdonald and his cabinet, we have the distinction of playing the first ever international game. We played against the U.S. in 1844 in the Ile de Montréal, and then followed by games in New York and Pennsylvania. So we do have a history of playing, not just playing the first ever international cricket game, but having it as a national sport that lasted for 18 months. And then lacrosse, of course, took over. A lot of people thought ice hockey was until by an act of parliament in 1999. So we do go back a long way. And Manitoba has a very long history as well. July 16th, 1870 was when the first game of cricket was played in Manitoba.
That's incredible.
Victoria Park. Yeah.
Where was it played?
Victoria Park.
Victoria Park. All right, Manitoba, step up. We've got a deep history here. We want to know about your present-day love of cricket. Join our conversation today with Alfonso Franco, who's clearly passionate about the game. 204-780-0893. Now, you're joining us from, you're in Victoria, correct?
Yes, I live in Victoria, BC, and we've had cricket here since 1849. We're just celebrating our 175th anniversary this year.
And how is it for you to be the manager of Canada's men's cricket team? That's quite an honor.
You know, it's an honor. It's a privilege. I've been, I was a national level track and field athlete. I thought I would get to a higher level in track and field or martial arts, but turns out that I had a passion for cricket, which was a game that I played not competitively, but just for the pure joy of playing. And to see that I was not good enough to play for Canada as a player. I played the provincial level, but to be able to now serve with the experience that I have as a CEO of a financial services company, bringing that into cricket, and I've been able to manage for the last decade or so professional teams as well as for Canada. And it's my passion. I'm living my passion. When people are retiring, I'm actually fully involved in being the most passionate person I can be, with cricket being the center point of my life.
204-780-0893. Why do you love cricket so much, Manitoba? I know folks are out there. I know there are people who are very excited that Canada's men's cricket team made the T20 Cricket World Cup for the first time this year. We've got the manager of the team here to talk with us. Help us join your love of the game and spread it in our beautiful province, which apparently has a long history of cricket love. Tell me what it was like for you, Alfonso, to see our Canadian team qualify for the T20 World Cup for the first time.
You know, it's always probably the most special feeling a person can have, wearing the Canadian uniform, playing under the Canadian banner. And doesn't matter if the person was born in Canada or if they chose to move to Canada. When they represent Canada, they are Canadian as far as I'm concerned. And the biggest honor of a person is to be able to, in a person's life, is to be able to play for one's country. I think players understand the magnanimity of the occasion, and they rise up to the challenge. As you mentioned earlier on, this is the first time we made the T20 World Cup. We have played 4 separate times in the ODI 50-over game, which is much longer than a T20 game. But this is the first time that we made it this far, and getting into the entry of, we came in at ranked number 23, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, we ended up on the 11th spot, tied with Sri Lanka. We did win a game against Ireland, and
that was huge.
Huge, very, very big. And we also were leading about 85% of the time against the U.S., and we gave Pakistan a run for the money. Now, Pakistan is a powerhouse in cricket, but we made a couple of mistakes, and we did come pretty close. The difference is that we don't have the infrastructure in Canada. Of course, our weather is going to be an issue. Even the U.S. has a lot of places where they can train. Most of our folks, work for a living, and then when they do train, it's only in the summer, and being out in the field to be able to play. So we have some limitations due to weather and other circumstances. But given all that we have achieved, it is a huge step forward. And I just hope there's more and more people will actually join at a younger level, get trained, and we want to see more Canadians taken up to the sport, because it's the fastest growing sport in the world, and we want to make sure that we're not left behind.
Absolutely. 204-780-0893. We want to hear from all those clever Manitobans out there. What do you think it's going to take to grow the sport in Manitoba? What do we need to see here? And what leaps and gains have we already made? Let's go back to what we were talking about with the T20 and the overs. I don't want to get too much into Cricket 101, because I have a brother, sir, who's tried to explain it to me many times. And the biggest thing that I keep coming up to is, okay, cricket is this wonderful game that everybody loves, and 2 teams can play 4 days and then no one wins, which just makes me laugh. I know that's a simplification. Forgive me. Somebody out there is getting angry. But the whole point of the T20 is to assure the game ends in a day, correct?
Actually, the game is 1.5 hours. Each side gets to play for 1.5 hours. It's 120 balls. 20 overs means 1 over is 6 balls. So 120 balls each side gets to bowl, and the result is obtained within that time frame. Sometimes sooner than the actual 120 balls each. For example, yesterday India beat England. So that was a game that was shortened. There was 2 great teams playing. England is the current defending champion, and the number 1 ranked team is India. And they collided yesterday. And as I said, that if you walk with purpose, you collide with destiny. So there was the destiny for either one of the teams yesterday. For Indian fans, fortunately, they won. For English fans, they'll have to wait until the next World Cup. It's 2026, and Canada has a very good chance of qualifying for that 2026 World Cup. It's being held in India.
Wow, which will have huge crowds, of course, because you just think of the population, but also the facilities they must have because cricket is so popular there. That'll be a great one. This year, the T20 was held in part in the Caribbean and in part in the United States. How does the T20 format, do you think, hook in? I think the hope is to grow cricket in the United States and in Canada, as there's also been a push we've seen in soccer to grow it here in North America. How do you think the T20 format, that shorter game, works better to kind of grab North American audiences?
I think North Americans are used to not spending a whole bunch of time to watch sports. Shorter and more exciting, the better. And I think the T20 format offers that. Traditionalists will say that they only like the 5-day test matches, which only a few countries, 10 countries, get to play against each other. Then some others will like the ODI, which is 50 overs. It's again 6 hours. 6-hour game, but this T20 appeals to a lot of people because it's 1.5 hours each side, and there's much more excitement here because a bowler is limited to bowling only 4 overs. You could be the best in the world, but you only get to bowl 24 pitches or balls. So that's 4 overs. And the game itself, then you need to be able to, there's lots of ups and downs as you watch when you watch these games until towards the end, you never know which side is actually going to hold the nerve and win the game. And we saw that yesterday and with England and India, and we're going to see that tomorrow. You have 2 teams that that remain unbeaten throughout the series this year. South Africa, a lot of people wrongfully or rightfully, depending on how they look at it, will say they've choked a number of times. Will they do so again? The Indians, on the other hand, are wanting to be world champions again, but they haven't won a world championship for the last few years, last 11 years or so. 2011 is the last one, I believe, they won. So either way, you have 2 great teams playing against each other, and the team that holds their nerves, I should say, and perform on the field will win this game. So
204-780-0893. Which team will you be cheering for tomorrow? And what do you think it's going to take to get cricket growing and even stronger in Manitoba? We do have a Manitoba Cricket Association. We've got lots of folks here who love the game, and you'll see more matches popping up, more games. You'll just be going through neighborhoods, and in the park, you'll see people playing cricket. Alfonso, you've been so involved in growing the sport in Victoria. What do you think we need to do as Canadian communities to try to install a love of the game in our young people?
I think all sports bring focus, determination, goal setting. There's lessons to be learned from cricket, as in other sports, for life. I think getting people to understand that just because you play one sport doesn't make you that one sport person. Rather, it's about growth in life. And the way to do that would be to get involved as many sports as you can, activities you can, cultural, music, and everything else that all this helps us become better human beings. I think cricket, in this sense, teaches us about not just about focus and determination, but also about the critical thinking of what we need to do under pressure, how we hold our nerves, how we perform under pressure, and how we overcome obstacles. And that is in cricket, you're asked to play each ball based on its merit. Similarly, in life, that's what we actually come to, is face it as you see. There's no, you can't run, you can't hide, but you have to face it right up front, and being able to move the ball around. Similar to in life, how do you overcome problems? You have to face it up front. And I think cricket has a lot to teach people. Young folks can learn about life through cricket. So I think all of us are privileged that have coached kids, grown up with people that have played cricket for a long time. This is a lifelong dream. You see, in Victoria, we have some folks that came out to play at age 90 because they have played over decades, and each decade they want to make sure they play. Some of our guys are still playing at 80, 81, 82 years old, still playing cricket. So I think it does, not competitively, but in the over 40s league, which has mostly people 60 and 70 years old, and now, of course, 80 and now 90. So I think this is a privilege to be able to play a sport for that long.
And a privilege for you, you've mentioned, to make it effectively the focus of your life.
Yes, I do have other passions in my life, but this is one of the passions that actually has taken me to the World Cup. So
It has taken you to the World Cup. What was that experience like to be there with these teams that are just so respected around the globe?
Well, I think the team, the folks that play for various countries are idolized in their own countries. In Canada, of course, we know none of the cricketers, the general population does not know. But the fact that because you're wearing the Canadian colors, you have pride. So our players are very, very proud to have represented the country. And they got a taste of fandom and people wanting autographs and people lining up to see them, both in the U.S. and people that traveled on to the West Indies. It's for us, for Canadians, it's we don't have, when we played the U.S., we didn't have 37,500 people cheering for the other side, So we have to get used to this, and we held our nerve for most of the times. But it's one of those learning experiences that we can only get better based on, we practically have no support from the government of Canada, but we are resourceful in how we manage to come through. I think there's a small grant from Sports Canada, but otherwise not really for a sport that requires quite a lot of infrastructure. I think much more than money, infrastructure is what we need to get better at this game.
Like what kind of infrastructure? What are you speaking of specifically?
So when you play a game of cricket, the pitch, it's called a turf wicket. This is where internationally everybody gets to play at this level. And for example, the city of Victoria, we have no turf wicket. All of BC, we just have one turf wicket. And so when your infrastructure is not available, it's very difficult to compete at a higher level. So we need to be able to produce more grounds that people can play regularly. And that way they'll be used to a world-class pitch, and you can compete against other people who have much better facilities than we ever will. But we have to, doesn't mean we give up. We have to keep trying to walk before we can run.
So
facilities.
I'm thinking now, just to put this in perspective to what people would be very familiar with, curlers and hockey players and figure skaters. They talk about the quality of the ice, how that's important. And we're renowned in the world for having amazing ice makers. So you're saying that when our bowlers go out and are trying to play the best cricket they can, if the turf isn't just right, they're not going to get the proper result, correct? Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, because not just the turf being right, but we don't have, you can go to an ice skating rink and skate. Those are universal. Skating rinks are pretty much, we can go to different cities. But cricket fields, like all of BC, we have one turf field. And so when you see that, how can we produce? And yet BC has 5 players playing on the national team currently. So we need to be, and they go to train elsewhere. That's my point, is we don't have the infrastructure. If we had them in Manitoba, if you had them in BC, if you had them in Alberta does have a couple of turf fields, but BC, like I said, just one. And we need to, first of all, get the turf fields and then have the quality of the pitches being maintained to international or national level. Then we'll see it being translated to more wins for Canada, because we don't have to go elsewhere to train. We can train at home. Yes, winter, we do have to do a bunch of stuff indoors or go to places where the sun shines a little more than Canada does, So
we're used to that. Unfortunately, so often our athletes have to go elsewhere to continue their training and to get, to those really high international levels. I'm surprised to hear the federal government doesn't support cricket financially in some way.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the figures, but I think it's a grant of maybe perhaps 80,000 or 100,000 once a year. But they need more support for a game that we have now qualified at the World Cup level. I think if the sports minister is listening, perhaps there'll be a good, gentle reminder to make sure that amateur sports like cricket get some recognition in the form of infrastructure, as well as any other support that they can actually give.
Now, I know that the T20 Women's World Cup of Cricket is coming up in October. How does Canada's women's team rate?
Yeah, see, let me go back a little bit. So women's cricket started in 1890 in England. The very next year, 1891, there were 2 women's teams in my hometown of Victoria, BC. So we go back 1891. Now we fell apart over the years, didn't have anything. And finally, about 20 some odd years ago, a cricket team was formed, and they've been competing regularly and doing well. Now, I don't know what the current standing is, because I think there's some games are going on right now, but women's cricket needs to be supported, because it's not just a sport for men, it's for everybody. And women's teams generally have been ignored in different places. And the various reasons, infrastructure is one of them, and not enough people playing. But that can be sort of conquered simply based on numbers of people putting the kids into cricket. And I think women's cricket deserves exactly the same support that men's cricket deserves. And the recognition also comes with it. I think there's a few things we can do where Canadians can decide to have their girls play along with boys at a certain level. And there are different pathways for young girls and ladies to get into cricket and actually make their provincial teams. If you need more information, you can contact your provincial cricket board. I believe it's Manitoba Cricket Association will have more information for people in Winnipeg and rest of Manitoba. There are clear pathways, and any athlete that is good in other sports will come directly in because of the athleticism that they already have. They'll be so many steps ahead of the rest of the folks. My own sister-in-law played for Canada. And I always tell people that she was way better than my brother. There's a lot of athletes who can, these are transferable skills. They'll pick up cricket really well, and they'll have an opportunity to excel. And again, playing for one's country, playing for one's province is a matter of, it's a huge honor. And it'll be fantastic to see more young girls, young ladies join and become cricketers.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Alfonso Franco, you've been so generous with your time today and your expertise. Thank you so much for everything you've done for cricket in this country. I hope we get a chance to chat again.
Thank you so much.
Before I go, are you allowed to tell me who you're cheering for tomorrow?
Well, I cheer for Canada first and foremost.
Right. I understand, but they're not playing.
Yes. I have friends who are playing for both countries, India and South Africa. I am of Indian origin, from albeit a Portuguese background. But the thing is, I do cheer for the teams that people I know, and I have more friends on the Indian side than I have in South Africa. But I will may the best team win tomorrow.
Very, very diplomatic answer. Thanks so much, sir. Have a great weekend, and happy Canada Day.
Happy Canada Day. Thank you.
Alfonso Franco is the manager of Canada's men's cricket team, which made it to the T20 World Cup of Cricket for the first time and defeated Ireland, which was quite an accomplishment. I want to thank the team who helped us this week bring you Radio Noon. I want to thank Wendy Parker. Thank you, Brad Lillies. Thank you, Marshall, whose last name, Hodgins, right? I remembered. May McKillop, thank you so much. Thanks to Dylan Longhurst, Travers Peterson, other members of our team, to Riley Laychuk, to everyone at CBC Manitoba, and most of all, thank you for joining us. Have a fabulous long weekend. We'll chat with you Tuesday here on Radio Noon.